Kendall Ruber. She is a data science and analytics at Yum Brands. Today, she's going to talk to us about the voice of the customer, how you can use natural language processing and social media to extract customer feedback. Kendall is a data analyst at Yum Brands, parent company of KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and the Habit Burger Grill. Thank you, Kendall. I was hungry enough until I read your bio. Now I'm even more hungry. She's also a part-time statistics instructor for University of Louisville graduate programs. In her role at Yum Brands, she is responsible for extracting and analyzing data from the company's various subsidiaries, ranging in areas from food safety to cybersecurity across the brand's international markets. I'm going to go ahead and bring Kendall up on our virtual stage here. Hello, welcome to the DATAcated Conference. I appreciate your patience kind of hanging out there backstage.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, I can see you. I'm going to hop off the stage and you've got the next 10 minutes and I'll share your presentation.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Kate, for the introduction, and I guess we can go ahead and jump in. Before I get to talking about social media too much, I want to discuss how companies traditionally solicit this type of feedback from their customers. So at Yum, we're home to some of the world's most famous brands, and that includes KFC. I'm sure many of you have heard that we have a new chicken sandwich coming out, and if you haven't, go try it. Maybe try it on your lunch after you get out of here. But like many other organizations, one of the ways that we're tracking customer satisfaction with this new product is through our customer satisfaction survey located on the bottom of the receipt. And companies like ours, they've long utilized customer satisfaction surveys and questionnaires to get this type of feedback from their customers. Typically, these surveys consist of a series of prompts followed by either multiple choice and short answer questions. These screenshots that I've included here are actual questions that we ask our customers in this survey and actual responses to, and you can see right away that they're pretty straightforward. So why should companies turn to social media in addition to what they're already doing? First, there are a lot of limitations with surveys. So these questions, they're directly prompted to the customer, and the answers are often pre-selected. So this is really going to limit both the type and the depth of the feedback that we can receive from them. But with social media, on the other hand, most times that feedback is raw, honest, and unsolicited. And I think that this is where we gain the most insight from the customers, because that's truly, I like to say, what they're saying out in the wild, but that's what they're saying about our brands or our products without us directly prompting them. Next, social media, it has a large scale. So I'm sure many of you have noticed that going viral seems to be the new large scale form of advertising. And with social media, you just want to make sure that you're going viral for the right reasons. I will give that caveat, but we can reach both current and potential customers at a global level. So think of people doing things like TikTok challenges or maybe making mock recipe videos with our products. And lastly, we do want to show that when customers speak, we listen. Incorporating feedback from the customers is going to be key to our long-term brand and product success, and also shows that we're engaging our audience. So you might be wondering, where do I begin? And like a lot of analytics roles, most of our heavy lifting is going to be done in the text cleansing and the pre-processing of this data. For this project, I downloaded the Sentiment 140 dataset. It's publicly available on Kaggle. This dataset contains a bunch of tweets, 1.6 million to be exact, but to give us more of a focus around this analysis, I narrowed these tweets to only those containing the word iPhone. So this is kind of mirroring how we would want to center it around a specific product or service if you were doing this for your company. And this visual, it'll show the various stages of text cleansing, starting first with our raw input and going all the way to our new cleansed column. The first thing that we want to do is just some basic formatting around the text. So converting everything to lowercase, getting rid of some Twitter handles that might be in there, and tokenizing our tweets so they can be processed in the next steps. After that, we might want to remove stop words. So stop words are words like and, the, and but that are very common in both written and spoken English, but don't really provide a whole lot of insight into what our customer is actually talking about. And here, our stop words are chosen from NLTK's out-of-the-box stop words dictionary, but also with other industry and company-specific terms that are added as well. So one of the terms that I added here was phone. And if you think of that example, like, yes, we're talking about an iPhone, that's something that customers are probably going to be mentioning all over the place. But is it really specific? And is it really giving us more insight into the product than what we already know? Probably not. So we would want to go ahead and remove those. After that, lemmatization can help avoid a lot of redundancy in your data. And so what lemmatization does is it takes words like run, running, and ran and converts them to their root word run. And with all of those words, you can see that they're essentially conveying the same idea. Somebody or something is running. But going ahead and converting those 4 or 5 words down to one word is going to reduce a lot of the repetitiveness that we have. And you can see this here in our example where first the customer says, my iPhone is broken. And after the lemmatization, it takes that word broken and converts it to break. And then finally, we are left with our cleanse text column. So I want to give the disclaimer that this is absolutely, by all means, no comprehensive list of all the tools that you can use to clean your data, but it is a great place to start. You can see here that we have reduced the length of our tweet down to about 1/3 of what it was originally, also with removing a lot of the filler words that were in there before and just some of the extra noise. And now we're left with only the most relevant information to what our customer is talking about. And in our next slides, I'll show you all how we can take this cleansed data and use it to gather further insight. And first here, I want to start with a very popular way to visualize data that I assume most people on this call are probably familiar with, which it's called a word cloud. If you're not familiar with a word cloud, the more frequently a word is mentioned in your text, the larger it will show up in the visual. And so these, I think, are a great, quick and simple way to get a high level view of what your customers are talking about. And so I'd like you all to go ahead and take a quick look and notice if there's any words that stand out to you in particular. So for me, there were 3 words here that stood out. First, we had 3G. Second, there was a few different Twitter words. And then lastly, Bitly. So you might be wondering, okay, like, why is she focusing on these old releases and these old technologies that all seem to be released in 2008? Well, if you're familiar with the Sentiment 140 dataset, you might know that those tweets were extracted in 2009. And so for me, I think this is definitely one of my favorite slides in this presentation and one of the most important because it really demonstrates how crucial timing and context is to text analytics. If we were to pull these tweets today, we would very likely not get these same results. And full disclosure, I was literally Googling what some of these terms were because 2008 was a long way before I had an iPhone. But it does show companies like Apple or maybe even Apple's competitors that the customers were in fact talking about these new releases. And so they're talking about their new products, demonstrating their engagement with the brand and with the tool and the impact that these new releases had on their lives. Also, sentiment analysis is another great way to gain some quick insight on your data. And on the left-hand side, we have some sample tweets, and keep in mind, they probably don't make a whole lot of grammatical sense, but that is because they've already been through the cleansing stage. But you can see here overall how your customers are feeling toward your product, whether it's something that's maybe good, bad, or maybe even neutral. And diving deeper, we might want to see if there's any recurring themes to what the customers are talking about. So does it seem like a lot of people are complaining about a hardware issue with the product? Does our battery tend to die frequently? Or what are people using the phone to do in their daily lives? And one way that we can study this is to perform text clustering. So with this data set in particular that I use for the example, the tweets are not previously labeled. And so that's where we need to use unsupervised machine learning algorithms. Like in this case, I use k-means to cluster our tweets into clusters based on their subject matter. And so this is done by converting each word in a tweet into a number so it can be processed by the machine. That number is further processed into an array. After that, the number of clusters is chosen and the centers of each cluster are calculated. From there, a data point will be assigned to a cluster depending on whichever center it is closest to. And here in our visual, the centers of each cluster are denoted by the large gray dots. And so as you add more data to the model, more tweets are created and collected. Both the clusters and their centers are going to be continually updated. And here we are resulting in about 5 different clusters. And so these are the results of some of our clusters showing the top 20 words for each of them. And I went through and highlighted some words that when I was going through these stood out to me. But as you read through the words yourself, you might notice that each cluster kind of tends to lean toward an overall theme. And so from that, each cluster is labeled according to its theme, resulting in clusters for upgrades, 3G, software and app updates, Twitter, and product inquiries and feedback. And so clustering customer feedback in this manner is really powerful because it shows businesses what their customers are buzzing about. And if you remember in the slides from earlier, it's not really surprising here that we've ended up with a cluster for both 3G and for Twitter. And with cluster analysis, it's always a great idea to preview your data to make sure that you agree with the clusters that you're getting and that those classifications seem logical. And so I did end up having 5 clusters, but for the sake of time here, I'm showing a preview of tweets classified under our 3G category. And so if you go ahead and look at the tweets on the far left-hand side, that's our original data, raw input, before it went through any processing. And you can kind of see why this model associated these tweets with each other, and then ultimately why it ended up clustering them together. And to close out the presentation, I wanted to provide you guys with some ideas on how you can apply this in your own organization. So tying back to how we might apply this to the KFC chicken sandwich, could we maybe identify areas of improvement with the product? Could we create a hashtag to directly engage with the customers? Or could we potentially take customers who've raved about the product and give them discounts or coupons to purchase more? So here, the opportunities are truly endless, whether you're like me, whether you're like me in the food and beverage industry, or maybe you belong elsewhere. And so that wraps up my presentation. The code and slides for this will both be available on my GitHub, but if people would like to reach out on LinkedIn, that's more than okay too. And I wanted to thank you all for your time, and I hope that you feel inspired to do this type of analysis in your own organization. And now I'm ready to take questions from Kate.
Absolutely, Kendall. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really, really insightful, and you've covered so much in such a short amount of time. Really appreciate this. We do have so many questions and comments that have come in. We'll take 2 quick questions from the audience here. We'll start with Nicole. She's asking, what platform did you use to cleanse the text on your journey here?
Yeah, so this is all done in Python.
Python. All right, awesome. Thank you. I created a word cloud for the registrants of the DATAcated Conference before as well. And I used Voyant tools, which is you just dump the text in and it creates it for you. So I can't really say I created it. So that's awesome. And then we'll take a question here from Carolina. She's asking, do you have challenges with responses containing slang or sarcastic comments?
Yes, so I would definitely say that that is one of the biggest caveats to doing text analytics is that it's not so great on picking up on slang or sarcasm like you mentioned too. And as more people use the tools, they do learn continuously, and so they get better and better. But that's definitely something that when you're going through the analytics, you want to preview your results to make sure that you're not getting a whole lot of misclassifications like that, or you're controlling for it as best as you can.
Yes, absolutely. If you do have time, Kendall, there are plenty of questions on word clouds and NLP and all of that good stuff and social media coming at you that we simply don't have the time to address here live. But I definitely want to thank you again for the great presentation.
Yes, thank you.